In the early 1900s, an American man started speaking remedies for people's illness in his sleep. He started diagnosing illnesses which even the doctors couldn't understand. Astonishingly, as the remedies he spoke in his sleep began to cure people from their lifelong illnesses and diseases, he soon started gaining popularity, even among some of the world's well-known celebrities and high-ranking officials, along with individuals who held some of the world's prominent positions of power at the time. As many flocked to his place to cure their illnesses, many were there to know from him what their future held in store for them, and others to know what the future of the world would be like. In this course, as people were astounded by his miraculous abilities, he was termed as the sleeping prophet. This distinctive individual soon became a topic of speculation, examination, and investigation among doctors, researchers, and the scientific community. And he thus became the most documented psychic in history. Join us today in this episode as we delve into the realm of the supernatural and take a look at and examine the life of Edgar Cayce. I am David McCoy, and before we dive into today's story, if you like and are into the supernatural, the paranormal, the strange and dark phenomenons from around the world, you are at the right place. At Dark Turf, we delve deep into and investigate the mysterious occurrences from around the globe and try to understand what they really are. If it sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification icon so you don't miss any episode. Also, you can join us on social media networks and become an important part of the community. The links are given below in the description. That being said, let's dive into today's story. Way back in March of 1877, a second child was born to Carrie Elizabeth and Leslie Burr Cayce, who named the child Edgar. Both Elizabeth and Leslie were farmers living in Hopkinsville, a Christian county of Kentucky, USA. In a family of devout Christians, Cayce grew up in the loving care of his father and mother in the simple and ordinary surroundings of farms and countryside, as can be imagined long back in the late 1800s or before the turn of the 20th century. Leslie Burr Cayce used to run a dry goods store after he was unsuccessful as a farmer. Edgar was one of his sons among 6 children. During his early years, when Edgar was about 10 years old, one Sunday, he was led and introduced to the village church by his parents. As Edgar entered the church, he was immensely impressed by the image of Lord Jesus and continuously gazed around in fascination. It was during these early childhood years that Edgar Cayce began telling people around him that he had visions of people who were long dead. In one instance, he told his parents that he had been talking to his dead grandpa. The parents dismissed them all as his childhood fantasies. Soon after, when Edgar was handed a Bible, he became so absorbed by it that he started reading it from cover to cover, again and again. When children of his age would play and run outside, he would sit in one corner and flip the pages of the Bible over and over again. Once, as he was reading the holy book in a cottage near a forest, he said he was visited by a little angel in wings who stated that God was pleased with his devotion and she wanted to grant him a wish, and asked him what he wanted. After some thought, Cayce said that his utmost desire was to help people in need, and especially children who were sick, to which the fairy stated that his wish would surely come true. Edgar had always been a struggling student in his school, as he would find it hard to concentrate in his studies and thus was doing very poorly. Once, Cayce was reprimanded by his teacher and later by his father for scoring very poorly in a spelling test. Edgar was scolded and made to learn those spellings late into the night, but he soon fell asleep on top of the book. After awakening, much to his father's surprise, Now, after Edgar had slept on his book, he was now able to recite the whole book, from page to page. This further astonished his teacher, and shortly after, he was soon to be declared the best student in the school, to the utter delight of his parents. When Cayce was 15 years old, he completed his 8th grade and left school and tried his hand in various jobs, including helping in his uncle's farm, becoming a bookstore clerk and as a shop salesman in Louisville in the year 1898. Later, he worked as a traveling salesman for an insurance company. In the year 1900, Cayce set up a photographic studio in New York as it was in total agreement with his strumming and painful vocal cords, as a result of which he sometimes used to lose his voice. It was at this time when Cayce met a stage performer who suggested him to go through hypnosis, saying it may help him reduce his pain. Cayce agreed to try hypnosis, and during the session, as Cayce went in a deep hypnotic state, he suddenly started to softly utter something. Listening closely, he was actually uttering a cure for his own illness. Surprised, they then decided to try the treatment, and soon after, Cayce started to recover, and thereafter was cured of his problem. And from now on, whenever Cayce had issues with his voice, he was able to go through hypnosis and cure himself. Later, his hypnotist friend, Al Lane, started using Cayce while treating other patients. The cures provided by Cayce seemed to be very effective indeed, which made this practice very popular. But soon after, Cayce was ordered by the medical board to stop this practice by saying that this misled people, and Cayce was an illiterate doctor and did not possess any license to practice cures. On the 17th of June, 1903, Cayce got married to Gertrude Evans after he had shifted to Bowling Green, Kentucky. Of the 3 sons he had from his marriage, one of them had been suffering from an eye infection, and it was after a while Edgar pronounced a cure for his son's infection when he was in a trance-like state. And soon after, he also pronounced a cure for her wife who was suffering from tuberculosis. It was among his friends that Cayce started becoming popular for his ability to cure people by correctly diagnosing and pronouncing remedies for their illnesses in his trance-like state. As his name slowly spread again, he soon came under the police radar and was subsequently arrested for practicing medicine without a valid license. To this, he promptly stopped all of his practices, but by now, people had come to know about his unique abilities and soon started visiting him in numbers. As this happened, he resumed his practice in a small scale, but he never charged or demanded anything as fees for his services. This astonishing ability of Cayce was now becoming very well known, and people seeking his remedies for their illnesses increased rapidly. In this time, he also started making prophecies while under his trance-like state, and when these prophecies soon started proving true, similar to his remedies, Edgar Cayce soon began to be known as the Sleeping Prophet. His ability of clairvoyance was now being widely acclaimed, which also attracted attention of some scientific and medical communities. This was when Cayce's pronouncements and prophecies began to be documented. The word of his fascinating abilities had also reached some well-known celebrities and people holding some of the top positions of power at the time. Some noteworthy figures who were flocking to visit him were Thomas Alva Edison, Woodrow Wilson, Harry Houdini, and Marilyn Monroe. His readings included personal matters of people, cures, and prophecies, and more than 14,000 of his readings were documented by his friend Al Lane, his wife Gertrude Evans, and later on by his secretary Gladys Davis Turner. The pronouncements and prophecies of Cayce began to be discussed widely, and the source of his extraordinary abilities were being probed as to how was he able to do what he had been doing. As a devout Christian and a God-fearing man, committed to the welfare of all, Cayce claimed that he was being commanded to a sleep-like state by the winged guardian angel, and then, his subconscious mind explored the dream realm under this trance-like state. And this was how he received the answers for people who were in need of cure for their illnesses and for those seeking advice from the higher realm regarding their personal matters. In this state, he also began to foretell the future related to many subjects such as science, afterlife, war, healing, and some significant future events. He often made worrisome prophecies and warned people of sufferings to come in the future and asked people to share their joys and sorrows and be more considerate to each other, which, he said, may help to avert these sufferings. Some of Cayce's prophecies included deaths of two famous U.S. presidents, Franklin D. Roosevelt and President John F. Kennedy. On April of 1945, President Franklin D. Roosevelt died in the office after his health seriously declined. And on November of 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas while traveling along with his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, in an open presidential limousine. He predicted the collapse of the Soviet Union or the USSR and the fall of communism. In 1942, he predicted the fall of the New York stock market, and some years later even gave hints to people on how to play the bull market safely. Those who heeded his warnings were actually saved, and the unmindful suffered a major financial turmoil after the crash that happened. In the year 1932, Cayce predicted the second coming of Jesus to the Promised Land, as prophesied in the Holy Bible. In January of 1934, Cayce made a prediction about the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, in which there is a detailed study of the little-known mystic Jewish sect called the Essenes. And decades later, his predictions came true and accurate as the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered over a period of 10 years on the northern shores of the Dead Sea. It was on the 4th of January 1934, Cayce made a prediction about the rise of Hitler, and in August of 1935, Hitler, who would reign in Germany as an absolute ruler and a dictator, had risen to power. One of the most astounding revelations of Cayce, made on the 1st of January 1945, was about his own death within the next 4 days, which shocked everyone. And as per his prediction, on the 3rd of January 1945, he passed away. And he lies buried in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, his birthplace. There were some of the most acclaimed prophecies of Edgar Cayce that were proven correct. But there still are some predictions of his that are yet to come true. Like the second coming of Jesus Christ, the becoming of China, where he prophesied that the Chinese people would be greatly civilized. He also prophesied of an ultimate self-fueling, perpetual motion machine. He predicted the conflict in the Persian Gulf, the Middle East, that may involve the countries of Libya, Egypt, Syria, and Turkey. He forecasted that, in the coming future, concepts like universal oneness, soul, reincarnation would be widely understood and accepted. This would be a mark of humanity's rising consciousness and that of a new age that would bring a new understanding of relationship of humans with gods. He warned that if human consciousness is not elevated, beings from other planet may cause a threat. He stated that extraterrestrial beings from other planets have been covertly visiting Earth for a long time. Another frightening prediction of Cayce was that of polar shift of the Earth's magnetic poles. He predicted this would put a major impact on Earth's climate, which would lead to some terrifying natural disasters and widespread devastation. He predicted the water would engulf Japan, and Northern Europe would see great devastation, as pole shift would cause water to be displaced, impacting huge parts of Northern Europe. In one of his predictions, he stated that the Hall of Records would be discovered. According to him, Atlantis was a highly elevated civilization. When its end was near, the people from Atlantis became aware of the upcoming disaster, and they hid the records of the Atlantean civilization in Bimini, Egypt, and also in Yucatan. Cayce's predictions that proved true widely captured the imagination of the people, and he soon was acclaimed all over the world. Edgar Cayce was immensely committed to the welfare of fellow mankind, as can be understood by his practice of healing people's illnesses and sharing messages of peace and brotherhood. In order to further the cause of humanity, in the year 1931, Edgar Cayce founded the Association of Research and Enlightenment, a non-profit organization to study and to do research on spirituality and holistic health, where workshops bring out papers on his predictions and his teachings. The Association of Research and Enlightenment has its headquarters in Virginia Beach in Virginia in the U.S., which has now expanded with centers in 37 countries worldwide. Prior to opening this organization, Cayce had opened a hospital in the year 1928, the Cayce Hospital of Enlightenment, where spirituality and holistic medicines were practiced. A large number of books and research materials on Cayce have been written and published by some well-known authors and researchers that provide a deep study and interprets the unique powers of Cayce. Some of the prominent works include the Akashic Records by Kevin J. Tedeschi, Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet by Jess Stern, Many Mansions, The Edgar Cayce Story by Gina Sermonara, and research papers by Alvin Alley and Callan Kaler are available today. Edgar Cayce himself has, in his lifetime, written and published a large number of books on his powers of healing and prophecies, such as The Edgar Cayce on Atlantis, where he has mentioned that he once lived in Atlantis more than 12,000 years ago, which was a highly civilized and technically advanced civilization that existed in the Atlantic Ocean. Some of the books he wrote were Edgar Cayce, Modern Prophet, Story of Jesus, On the Powers of Colors, Stones, and Crystals, My Life as a Seer, The Lost Memories, and Edgar Cayce's famous Black Book, a guide to Cayce's psychic readings, among many more where one can further study Cayce, who through his psychic powers tried to work for the welfare of mankind. He was a Sunday school teacher, a photographer, a psychic healer, a practitioner of homeopathic and holistic medicine, the sleeping prophet, and America's greatest mystic. On the 27th of October 2018 to November 11th, the 90 years anniversary of the Edgar Cayce Hospital in Virginia Beach was celebrated. The readings of Edgar Cayce, the books that he has written, and his life overall has proved to be an invaluable asset to all of mankind and to the world of the supernatural. These fascinating cases help shade ample light into the existence of other realm of beyond the three-dimensional world that we live in and ordinarily understand. These cases will always capture the imagination of us humans as we wonder about the other dimensions of existences that might be out there. And if Edgar Cayce is to be believed, there are forces beyond our perception that could guide us, as can be seen and understood through the angel in wings who came in contact with Cayce in his early childhood. Though he passed away in 1945, his legacy as a benefactor of humankind and as a source of inquiry into the supernatural realm will live on and will be remembered for generations to come. What do you think about the readings and life of Edgar Cayce? We are eager to know your thoughts and ideas in the comments section. If you like what we do and want us to continue bringing more of these stories, then please let us know by showing your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Also, don't forget to hit and activate the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episode. Also, consider joining us on social media platforms and be an integral part of the community. Until then, take care.